right, hello, welcome everyone. I'm Hayden Lee, a Master Certified Executive Life and Leadership Coach, and I'm also an Enneagram aficionado. I'm an Enneagram accredited Enneagram practitioner and facilitator and teacher and speaker. And I'm so excited. Today we are launching into Enneagram Type 2, which the nickname is the Considerate Helper. Before we meet our great Type 2 guests today, I do want to remind everyone what the Enneagram is. The Enneagram, I love it. It's a great system of development. It's a system of increasing our self-awareness, and it's really a system to develop into your best self. And I always say it's a system of self-liberation in the sense that the Enneagram helps us really become aware of our default thinking patterns, acting patterns, and feeling patterns that might actually get in the way of what we want and what we're trying to achieve. And I want to make the point that Enneagram is not static. That's why I really like it too. Sometimes people maybe dismiss it as, another typing tool. And although I love other, typing tools, I sometimes use DISC or Myers-Briggs, and those are great. Those are also really good. But I think that Enneagram is different than those in the sense that Enneagram is about long-term development, and it never stops because it is a system and it's a map of awareness for us to develop into really the best of all the 9 types and to really become the best of our type. So with that said, let's jump into type 2 today. I'm really excited. So type 2 is the Considerate Helper, and Enneagram is about motivation, not behavior. So that's super important for us to know. Sometimes people start guessing people's Enneagram, and it's fun, and it's fun to do that, but as an Enneagram expert, I do want to advise against just guessing people's types and not making it about stereotypical behavior, because we really don't know the underlying motivation of why people do what they do, right? So the motivation for the type 2 is, the motivation, the need to be liked or appreciated. And sometimes when we read the Enneagram or assessment for the first time, there's cringeworthy moments, and that's good, right? All the 9 types have cringe. I call them eek factor, the eek moments. It's good because the more eek factors there are in your Enneagram, the better, because it probably means it's striking true. So the 2 motivation is to be liked and appreciated, but 2s are awesome. I mean, 2s are helpful, right? They're warm, they're generous, they're caring. They always attend to other people's needs. And we all need 2s in our lives. But of course, we're going to dive deeper into really what makes a 2 tick and what do they think and how do they feel. And I'm excited today because we have 3 different types of 2s. If you recall, I said the Enneagram is actually 27 types because there's 9 core types, but within each core type, you could be one of 3 subtypes. So that's why there's actually 27 types. And we have 3 amazing 2s today, and they all represent a different subtype. So if we could all go around and just introduce ourselves, like our name, where we're from, and then what we do, that would be great. I'll start with you, Kanchan.
Thanks, Hayden. So my name's Kanchan Prinsloo. I'm based out of Toronto, and I am an executive coach. I'm a commitment to supporting women of color lead powerfully.
Nice. Thank you, Kanchan. How about you, Claire?
Hello, so my name is Claire Hayward. I am based in the UK and live just south of Edinburgh in Scotland. And I also work full-time as an executive and team/group coach.
Nice. Thank you, Claire. Tony.
Hello, I'm Tony Martinetti, and I'm over in Boston, in the suburbs of Boston, and I work with tech leaders to help them find fulfillment and to have an inspired life.
Nice.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, I realize this is a very coachy call today. We're all coaches on here, which is actually, I use the Enneagram in all of my coaching work, whether it's one-on-one work or group work, because it is such a great starting point for people to develop themselves. So all of us on the call, have done the assessment that I use called the Integrative Enneagram, or the IEQ-9. And you've all done a debrief with me for at least 90 minutes. What were your first reactions when you first read about your report? You know, who's dying to share a little bit? Anyone who wants to start first?
I'm going to,
Yeah,
well, I'll jump in actually,
yes.
because I was so annoyed with this number. I was livid. I in fact didn't pick it up after I saw it. I was like, I'm so mad that this is what this is. So I knew, as you reminded me so eloquently, let's hit a core. Probably very true. So it was good. Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I was gonna say if you want to go. So my first impression was definitely not positive, just like you, Kanchan. And you know, I had taken the Enneagram before, and you know, it was not as thorough as the integrative, and I was a 7, so I was the enthusiastic and visionary. And I mean, that's still a strong one for me, I guess, and that resonates. But you know, coming up as a 2 was concerning, because initially I was shocked and felt like, how can I be a leader and be labeled as a helper? It just did not compute. So it took some time for me to really adjust to the facts. I was not pleased.
I think I was surprised because I had a couple of folk go, oh, you know, as Hayden started saying, don't do that. But I had one person go, oh, you're definitely a 3. And I had someone else go, oh, you're a 7. So when it came out as a 2, I was like, oh. And yeah, in reading the report and going through it with Hayden, quite a lot of it just resonated. And I was kind of like, yeah, that actually is, I felt like I was being seen. And it was interesting because it felt like I'd only just started to see this in me as well. So it was interesting to have it reflected back as a bit of a, it's coming through here as well. So
yeah, thank you, Claire. So yeah, the Enneagram is about the motivation behind your behavior, right? So how does it land with you all that the motivation for the 2 is, you know, the need to be liked and appreciated? How does that land with you?
well, I'll carry on in that I have played that role my entire life. That is from from all the work I've been doing in training to become a coach. You know, I've known from playground. It was, you know, like 8 years old, vivid memories of being in the playground and just wanting to be liked, wanting to be included, wanting to please everybody, and just doing that like 24/7 up really until a year ago, which is why it was interesting to see it coming out. I didn't really realize the depth of it and the complexity of it. So very much everything had been up till about a year ago has been around that motivation.
Yeah. What about you two?
I really tried to push it away because I never thought it was because of that motivation. Like I really sort of went, no, I do all these things for all these reasons. And that, so hearing that, yeah, I have to own it. It's true. It's absolutely true. So it was a good eye opener. Not a good one. Let me be clear. It was an eye opener.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I mean, it really was an eye opener from the perspective of, you know, at first not connecting with it and feeling like, oh, I wanted to kind of toss it out and say, it's not true. But as I started to read into it more and say, yeah, this is showing up for me, you know, a lot of the characteristics and a lot of the ways it shows up in my life, and how it really does resonate with who I am and how I'm motivated. So I think that's the key differentiator.
Yeah.
So
I like how Claire brought up, you know, these memories of even being a little girl on the playground, and that's true. What we believe about the Enneagram is that it's part of our personality. We're born with it, we die with it, but then the better relationship we have with ourselves, then we're able to become a more healthy version of our type, right? We want to become the best of our type. So I think, Kanchan, I think it's very normal to you want to reject it, but then once you actually accept it and embrace it, that's actually the first step to liberation. As I said, you can become the best 2. Like 2s are incredible leaders. They are forces to be reckoned with once they accept that, you know, there is a need to be liked. And the need to be liked is always going to be there because that's the motivation that we have, but it's changing your relationship with the need to be liked, because there's a way to use that in your favor, right? There's a way to use that as a strong leadership skill. And in terms of the story that Claire shared, a little being on the playground, I think that's true for all of us. that if you kind of think back, to you being a kid, there's always been this need that you want people to like you, that you help people and you please people. Does that resonate with you, Tony, or Kanchan, too, like a childhood story? Tell me, Tony, like what comes up for you?
Absolutely. I mean, just the feeling of like, trying to fit in and, feeling this element of, what can I do to be in with the in crowd, and realizing that, at some point I need to give up on that. But it was always in my mind that, okay, how can I be in with the in crowd? How can I get them to like me?
And it's interesting, when I started to reflect on it, I was someone who always gravitated to being in the in crowd. And I just thought, well, that's kind of cool. That's just always, not realizing it is absolutely orchestrated by me. I've created that to get to that point. So that was a really interesting sort of reflection as I look back to go, yeah, no, it's been there, and it's within my control.
Yeah. I like how you use the word orchestrate, Kanchan, which is a good segue to one of the lovely and complicated parts of the two is, although they are so warm and so giving and so helpful to people, there is a little bit of a orchestration, like Kanchan was saying, whether it's conscious or not, but it is this idea of give to get, where sometimes like either, helping a lot, but then having maybe an underlying motivation of maybe, ooh, if I do this, maybe they'll see me in this way. If I do this, maybe I'll get this. And that could be one of the blind spots of the two, which is this not even knowing your true motivations for wanting to be so helpful or wanting to take the lead of the group. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how does that land with you, that there is a little bit of a give to get happening, whether you know it or not?
I'd love to speak to that.
Yeah.
Because that's been a real huge theme in my life, and I didn't even realize it, because of the fact that it led to a lot of the burnout that I experienced. This feeling of serving people and doing more, it overshadowed the self-care, because I felt like I had to do more to satisfy and to please other people, and that was an unfortunate side effect of my not taking care of my life and taking care of other things that filled my soul and took care of me. Yeah. I went there.
Could I ask a question regarding that, Tony?
Yeah.
So in your quest, or for lack of a better word, while you're helping, what did you secretly want as a result of it?
Yeah, I think there was an element of like of being seen as worthy, and wanting to be liked, and or seen as equal in the eyes of other people, people who are senior, people who are of higher stature, and that's something that maybe showed up in that. And I don't know if that's really the element of what two is, but I see it as that people-pleasing element, sacrificing myself for the sake of others, because I wanted to be helpful, but to an extreme.
Yeah. Kanchan?
What comes up with me with this, I'm listening to what Tony is saying, and I agree, that the piece that you spoke about, which is give to get, I am naturally a helper. Like, my first inclination is to what can I do? What can I do? What I'm really tuning into is when I get to a certain point of giving and I'm getting nothing back, I can drop it just like that. I mean, I don't know if wearing your collar, because I'm confessing here, but the point is, I've seen this pattern of me of just being able to go, okay, this is now too much. This is too much. And so if I was to really stop, what am I wanting? What's the get? Is it is appreciation. It's recognition. It's appreciation. And if they're not, it's dropped.
Yeah. Claire?
Yeah. And well, I've sort of, it's dependent on the groups, but with friends, it was just to be included. was just this desire to be included or not to be excluded. And that the motivation also about not being alone, the fear, driver of fear is that if I end up alone, my life will be over. So and I think with family though, I think it's just a pattern I got into, because ultimately my family's, you know, I've got siblings and it's all good, but they're not going to exclude me. But so I think it's just because I've always done it. I've always kind of looked after, I've been the eldest as well. So there was just this, and then it's hard to step out of that. I've never needed help. I've always just helped them. So that feels more of a pattern rather than I don't know what the motivation is there. And then also with my mom, I'm now separating from my husband, but I think staying in that relationship for so long, because we were together 20 years, was this, again, this wanting to not be alone. So this motivation to be liked and needed and used, but did everything for him. And that was exhausting. So that burnout side in there, definitely. So, and I don't want to do it anymore. So it's fascinating, different relationships, different, subtly different.
Well, what's coming up for me is, you know, all of I'm hearing a common theme of a lot of the self-sacrifice, right? And doing a lot for others. And part of that, though, is, you know, when you're focusing your attention on others' needs, it's deflecting from your own needs. But part of that is because twos may not know what their own needs are. They may not clearly know I don't really know what I want. I don't really know what I need. So I'm just going to distract myself by focusing on you. So how's that resonate? Yeah.
I think even more than that, I didn't even know, had no idea what my own needs were, because I'd never actually even paused. I didn't know. I just thought I was doing what was needed. I didn't reflect what I needed at all. It was weird. It's literally just, it's like the blinders have come off in this last year of that. Yeah. So it's stunning. It's something like, oh gosh, I've spent 46 years doing what everybody else wants, to pause and go, oh, hang on a minute, what do I want? It's a new world, a new life, and permission, giving myself permission. I guess in this growing in the two, it's like actually I have permission to ask myself what I need as well.
I absolutely echo what Clara said. She said it eloquently. Learning what is it that I need. That's a whole, and I'm at 54, so I'm still got a couple of years ahead of her. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Did you want to say something, Tony, about that?
Of course. I mean, I will, because it's just, I want to thank them for saying it, and just allowing me to kind of piggyback on that, and say, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It's that element of, you know, being able to look back and say, yeah, I wish I had known then what I know now. And that's where I'm at right now, is knowing that there's been a lot of lessons learned through the patterns that I've created, and now being able to break those patterns and seeing that there's ways out of that. So,
which brings up an interesting question then. So what if all of you figured this out 20 years ago? And in terms of taking the time to be like, wait, what is it that I want? What is it that I need? And I'm going to get it. How would that have changed things if we had this conversation 20 years ago?
An interesting question. I'd like to piggyback on that by saying that there's some element of having to go through some of the trials and tribulations, so you can learn what it's all about before you can really know what you want. But yeah, maybe I could have saved myself some of that struggle. Yeah. Maybe not 20 years, maybe, 10 years. So, yeah.
I think for me, if I would have learned this 20 years ago, I don't think it would minimize who I am as a helper. And the more I know about myself, the better I would have shown up. Because, the upside of the two is quite a beautiful thing in terms of, the upshot of it. So it's just, I think, knowing a little bit more, on that side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I would have changed my corporate career, 20 years corporate, but I think it would have been a lot less stressful.
Yeah.
trying to just be what everyone else wanted me to be. You know, Claire, stop being so sensitive, you know, and I'm like, well, I am, you know, that's fine. But I didn't, you know, there's that element of fitting in a corporate environment to get the promotion, to you know, it's like, oh God, exhausting to fit in and feel valued, that external validation, continuous. And I think it would have made me more courageous earlier. I mean, I think, but I think people would not necessarily see that, but because they see I'm being courageous now, and they probably go, you were very courageous back then, but I don't think I was as courageous as I could have been.
Well, twos, you know, often need to be reminded to, you know, treat themselves as well as they treat others, right? Or to take care of themselves as well as they take care of others. And with Kanchan was saying, I think if the life lessons, you know, that we're learning now, if we had learned them 20 years ago, I don't think it would have minimized at all who you are, but in a way it could have magnified it, right? Because like Claire was saying, actually, or Kanchan and all of you were saying, it's like, wow, even 20 years ago, if you really took the time to, you know, care for yourself and take care of your own needs, it would have maybe multiplied the impact you made, or multiplied how you help others, right? Because it's about being the healthiest part of the two, which at its best is really being a great leader, but serving and helping and loving on others without wanting anything in return, right? Truly serving without the give to get, right? And truly having healthy boundaries too, which is, I'm not, I can't do that right now, or really saying no, right? Which leads to this concept of vice to virtue, which I've told you all about. So the vice of the two is pride, and the virtue of the two is humility. So pride being, so although twos are so helpful and so loving people and people-centered, the pride part though is, well, I gotta do it, or no one can do it as good as me, or if I don't do it, no one will. That's where the pride comes in, this idea of maybe a little bit of inflated self-importance, or a little bit of believing you're indispensable. So how does that show up for any of you?
So for me, it shows up by, at times I just struggle to admit how vulnerable I actually am at this point. So I got this, I know what I'm doing, and I'm here to help you, but really, to admit my own vulnerability is where my pride gets in my way.
I was smiling because I remember a couple of years back, it was my mum's 70th birthday, and my sister had said she was going to organise it and, phone all of her friends and book the place. I ended up stepping in and doing it all, and that, now I didn't martyr them, but internally there was that resentment that, so it's quite a heavy place when you step into. So I don't know whether that's pride, but there's sort of that martyr and just I'm not sure that's quite right, but
well, I mean, may I clarify exactly? So what happened there's a line between 2 and 8, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. So 8 is the controller, right? And 8s are natural strong leaders, but there's a line between 2 and 8, and lines, for those listening, are development. So we use the Enneagram as a map, remember? So there's a line between 2 and 8. So for the 2, we want 2s to step into the healthy part of the 8, which is clear, assertive, powerful, and strong. But 2s under stress can go to the unhealthy parts of the 8, which then, Claire, can be a little bit controlling or micromanaging, or which in turn is a blind spot of it too, is disempowering those you're seeking to help.
Yes.
Right? Because you want to help your sister, but when you step in and do it all, it actually disempowers her rather than empowers her.
Yeah, I see that, definitely.
Yeah. What about you, Tony, about the pride or anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a real balancing act between the humility and pride for me, because, I try not to come off too strong, but when there's something that I'm really passionate about, and I feel like I want to be helpful, and I want to be heard, and people stuff me down, they don't really make clear space for me to be heard, I go silent. And then I kind of go internal. and my pride does get hurt. And for that reason, I feel like that's where I've seen this show up in multiple forms in the corporate world, but also in other places in my life, personally, and also in other forums. And the more and more I've looked back in that, it's really concerning for me when I say that, when I'm silent, I need to start, letting that out and let it roar, because of the fact that it's a sign that my pride is being broken. And I have to be more vulnerable about, like, hey, I feel hurt about this. This is why I'm feeling this way, because I feel like I'm not being heard. And I think that's where this is showing up for me, is that although pride can be a dangerous thing, it's also about making sure that you're not holding back, because maybe the thing that I have to say is important.
Yeah. Which goes to the virtue of humility, which humility actually, though, is this idea that you can ask for help. All of us are actually, I'm not more important than you, but I'm also not less than you either, right? So humility is this idea of, like, we're all equal and all of us need help.
But just listening there, something that came up around the pride is, I hate being someone taking the piss out of me or taking the Michael out of me, or laughing. I hate being laughed at, ridiculed. Ooh, and that's the pride of, how I look and who I am, to somebody and that's an element of that pride. Definitely.
I felt that, Claire. That was like exactly. Yeah.
Which I think is a good segue into the feeling center of the two, right? So it's all making sense now, right? So the Enneagram is a symbol, it's a circle, and there's three main feelings that Enneagram types grapple with. So types 5, 6, and 7 is about fear. 8, 9, and 1 is about anger. And 2, 3s, and 4s is about sadness or shame or self-worth. And when Tony, you even actually mentioned worth, and it is interesting the language I think you used of not when they shut you down, but is it not crush? What did you say? Shut down when I forgot.
Well, I shut down, but when I'm not being heard and I feel like I'm being, kind of made small, or I don't know.
You used a really specific word. I don't know if it was squashed or it wasn't squashed. Did they catch it? He said when others are, like, something about keeping you out or excluding you. I forget. It was a really strong word. If it was, I don't remember what the word was, but it was a very emotionally charged word, that resonated with the sadness or shame or self-worth. So for 2s, that's where the sadness comes from, right? The 2s sit in this, because 2s help, right? And they want to be liked and appreciated. So the fear is then not being liked, or even deeper is not being loved, like being unlovable. So then even deeper than that is this idea of, well, my worth comes from who I help. My worth comes from serving. So a really, really great reminder for 2s is that who you are and your worth comes from who you are, not who you help. Your worth comes from your being, not from your helping. So tell me about that, just wrapping your head around, even if you don't help one more person in the rest of your life, you are lovable and important and, worthy now, whether or not I help this person do this or whether or not I serve. Tell me about that. That's might be hard for a helper to wrap their head around, but not needing to help does not take away from your worthiness as a lovable human being.
This feels like my life's challenge of believing I am lovable, believing I have self-worth, not being embarrassed or feeling shame for who I am or criticizing. So this absolutely is like how I felt. It feels like my whole life, like literally I am unlovable. So it resonates completely.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that vulnerability. But you're absolutely right that the 2 of that really core fear of being unlovable. So, well, I will help and I'll earn love. I will do this. I will do that. I will self-sacrifice. I'm going to help all these people, and then I'll be lovable.
Busy. If I'm busy, do, then it covers up that, you know, or then people might like me if I just do, then I might be likable and lovable.
Yeah.
But and that is really sad and isolating and lonely, actually.
Yeah.
So here's another layer to that. Here it's a cultural layer. So I'm the youngest of two older brothers. My brothers were treated differently than I was. So I was the youngest, and I was a helper. So as my parents have gotten older, they're in their 80s, I will fly all over the world to help them. I will fly back, help them. And I am drained. I am, Tony, how you said it just absolutely resonated, like complete burnout. By the end of a week, I have given everything and redone and I am looking for worth, and I am looking for love. And they are at this age definitely saying this to me. So it's a loop. And I'm in there and I'm doing, and I'm, you know, but it's the lovable piece, it's the worth piece, and it's connected to my culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to point out just some of the language I'm hearing from your mouth. This is fascinating. Conscience saying, I've given everything. Yeah. First of all, that's a very two thing to say. But secondly, it like strikes my heart, right? Like, I don't know if I'm not a two, and I won't reveal which type I am yet, but I don't think that's ever been in my vocabulary to say I've given everything. You know, I think that's a beautiful thing, but at the same time, it sounds exhausting.
And it is like, I literally have to come home and I am in bed for 3 days. So when I say everything, I'm thinking both emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
I'm doing the work that, and that's when I know I've gone way too far, when I need to be in bed for 3 days.
Yeah.
May I ask a follow-up question? Well, I'm going to ask it anyway.
Oh. Sorry, I can't hear you.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there tinges of resentment in this with your brothers? Or do you feel like you're giving more than they are? And then does this lead to any anger or resentment?
Yeah, I think the resentment was there long before I was giving.
It's always been there.
because they got things that I didn't, which is love and acceptance long before, without doing. So I think there was a little bit of that. And I am being appreciated by them as well. So again, feeds this cycle of overdoing. I'm much better at it. This was a few years ago, but I'm much better at it now, creating some boundaries, but I know what it feels like.
Well, I want to make the clarification though, because once again, you said they got the love. You've always had the love. Love's always been there. And that's the thing with love with you twos. Love is. Love is.
Yeah.
It's not something that I can do to earn. It's not something, if I help, then my parents will love me. Love is. Mm-hmm. So isn't that interesting, Hunter? You're like, oh, well, my brothers got the love, but you always had the love too.
It's such a good catch. It's such a good catch because it creeps in, right? That story, that narrative is felt. So good catch, Hayden.
Yeah, like needing to do something to earn love or get love, and that's just baloney. Like love exists as love is. It as is. Yeah.
You say it's baloney. It doesn't feel like baloney.
No, it doesn't feel baloney, but I'm saying the feeling is different. Yeah. So the feeling is different. Yeah, you have to. Thank you for that. I don't want to downplay the feeling.
So real. It's
but
like
because there's we don't have time to go into the thinking center of acting, feeling, and thinking. But the thinking center is logic, analysis, and totally like just factual data, right? So from the thinking center of analysis side of things, love is, right? But then the feeling side, of course, is where it's like, well, it doesn't feel that way. But then from the logical side, love is this. Love is an emotion that is just, it's like equal to any other emotion in the sense that it's like a construct. It's very, I don't want to go into that like analytical point of view, but it's interesting because fives are the thinkers, like, fives are the analysts, so they can very much compartmentalize. That's their strength, actually, is like they don't take things personally and they don't let their feelings overtake them because they see emotions as like data almost, or like facts, so I don't want to go down that road, but it's just interesting. Yeah, so thank you for that that it's not baloney that it feels that way, but it's baloney that love is something that one must do to earn, because I was saying we're lovable by definition of by being human, right? So, Tony, did you want to add to that?
No, I think that was really, good what we've talked so far. I'm totally on board with what was said, so I'm cool.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, which we're gonna talk about this in a second too. With the subtype, so Claire's a self-preservation 2, Conscience is social 2, and Tony is a one-on-one 2. I'll go into that a little bit, what that means in a second. The self-preservation 2 is the counter type, which is the 2 that's the least like the other 2s. The self-preservation 2 does speak her own needs and will, step up a little bit more than maybe the other 2s. Which the reason why I'm saying this is I like that you called me out on the baloney line, because that might have been a self-preservation 2 where you're like, wait a second, I'm going to stand up for myself and stand up for my own needs, which is great, that's why sometimes the self-preservation 2 is called the counter type, because she might be less overtly self-sacrificing than the other types of 2s.
I want to share this story because it's just so vivid here in me. I remember being about 5 years old, or maybe 7 years old, with my sister who's 5, so she's 2 years younger than me, playing the recorder to my grandparents, and my mum's there, and I am playing my best because I want to get some compliment, but my sister gets all the compliments. And it was crushing. And that's just like one microscopic example, but that has played and played and played and played and played, trying to be lovable by action.
Yeah.
So I guess the question I would love to ask next is what happened? What did you do next? Did you give up or did you continue?
Like I say, my life has been that. It's been to get the degrees, it's to get the job, my whole life has been getting qualifications or doing well, so I might get some love, because well, obviously it is universal, but it doesn't feel like it was universal at all. It felt like it was only dependent on delivery of something.
That's interesting.
Which is a good segue to the lines. So like I said, the Enneagram is about development and it's not static, so we have an opportunity to move throughout the Enneagram to become our best self. So the 2s have lines to type 8 and type 4. So type 8, the nickname is the controller, sometimes the defender, the challenger. And the line to the 4, the type 4, is the creative or the artist. So there's different ways to use the lines, but I'm using it in a sense that if we scoop up or, use the best of the 8 and the 4, it's a way to develop. So the best of the 8 is being assertive, stepping into your power, being direct, saying what you want, saying no, challenging others, when you need to, worry less about what other people think. That's the best of the 8. The best of the 4, tapping into your creativity, embracing your individual needs, embracing how you're a unique individual, connecting deeply with others and sharing your vulnerability and your emotions, and actually sharing your vulnerability and emotions with everyone else, because 4s love to feel, but they talk about how they feel. They're very in tune with their emotions, their needs, and they talk about it a lot. Sometimes, in excess, which could be one of their challenges, because they're always talking about what their own needs are, what they want. But 4s are, can, like I said, tap into their creativity and see the beauty in everything. So tell me more about, so for you 3, which line of being the best of the 8 or the best of the 4 will be top of mind for your next area of development or your current area of development?
I'll speak to the one that's the area of development for me most is the 8, because of the fact that there's an element of wanting to be more assertive for what I want and the saying no. I mean, I've made some amazing progress around this area, but there's an element of really standing up for taking a stance and being more in power of that, because I do want to help. I do want to, be there for everyone, but you can't, realizing limitations of what I can and can't do. Not because I don't see possibilities, but it's about the limitations around my energy and around, creating boundaries so that I can be powerful.
Well, it's the humility piece though too, right? The humility piece of I'm only human. and I can
Yeah.
only do so much. Like that's
Yeah.
humility, you know? So being careful, healthy boundaries is humility because we can't do it all. What's that one quote? It's like, we can do anything, but we can't do everything,
I
right? To
love that.
really embrace, that really is a humble point of view, is I
Mm.
want to help everyone, but I can't, right?
Mm.
That's a humble point of view. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. What about you, Kanchan?
For me, it's the 4, actually, to really dig a little deeper. And that's part of it is the self-discovery as well. But there's a whole creative side of me that I know I have, but just really exploring that further is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same as Kanchan in that I really haven't accessed my creative side since I was at school or even early school. And I really have this sense of, I'm also getting kind of indications that I need to relax and do introspective work. And I think even I'm questioning, how do I even relax? And I think the way for me to relax is to be creative, like drawing. I really want to, but I don't create the space even. So it's like giving myself space, an hour to do some drawing. And I think that is going to really support me. So yeah, definitely the 4.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. So using and also consciously just using your lines, like I said, is also being aware of when I need to step into my 8, when I need to step into my 4, is just great awareness of consciousness and catching yourself, you know, maybe when you are being an unhealthy part of your 2, and then being, all right, what would an 8 do in this, or what would a 4 do? And there's wings too, which we don't have time to get into, but we all have wings. The wings are the 2 types on either side of us. So for the 2, it's the 1 and the 3. So those are flavors that are within you too. It's not as big of a stretch of development as going to your 8 or your 4. But we have the perfectionist in you, and you have the achiever in you. That's just part of you as well. The last point I want to cover is the subtype. So I thought it was really fascinating that we have 3 subtypes on our call today. We have Claire is a self-preservation 2, Tony is a one-to-one 2, and Kanchan is a social 2. So as a reminder, the instincts, so each of the core types is divided into 3 instincts. So the self-preservation instinct is the instinct of taking care of oneself first, right? Preserving oneself. So my own security, my own needs, my own safety first and foremost. So that's what self-preservation is. One-to-one 2 is the instinct of having really intense relationships with specific people, right? So it's kind of like connecting really deeply with one person at a time, and that's their instinct. And the instinct for the social is about the group. Social, being very aware of social hierarchy, being very aware of who's who in the group, and wanting to move the whole group in a certain direction. So how that shows up for 2s, the self-preservation 2, which is Claire, is the counter type, which I said earlier, is the self-preservation 2 is the least like the other 2s in that she does have a pretty good idea of some of her needs and will speak up, but still helps others in a way that, you know, sometimes Claire, you know, sometimes 2s don't like to hear, self-preservation 2s don't like to hear this, but sometimes the self-preservation 2 can be kind of like innocent or cutesy. And that's kind of a way for them to get what they want or to get their own needs met. And then do you hate that I said that?
I know that I do that. I have that kind of energy, so that I'm quite happy with that. You know, that
Okay.
cheeky, mischievous energy. But when I read that self-preservation, all I can think of, that just sounds really selfish. Just like,
such a 2 thing to say, yeah.
But it does. It's like, how selfish is that if all I'm worried about is my own safety and material security and well-being? It's like, that's terrible.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not, that's a very 2 perspective, but it's just, but that is that instinct though, where you are more aware of your needs, versus, so Tony as the one-to-one 2, like I said, tell me about, and as a 2, the one-to-one 2 is really about also, like I said, connecting with specific people. And then, but in a way though, helping them more than you help yourself, like specific people, like kind of sacrificing a lot of yourself, and you know, and certain people, not everyone, like certain people in your life, you're more prone to maybe sacrifice your own needs for them than others. How does that land with you?
Very much so. I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that I feel on a day-to-day basis, in my personal life, but also in my work. I mean, I feel like that's exactly why I talk about deeper connections as being important to me. And it's not about the group work. It's more about that one-on-one and spending time with people to kind of see what's really going on. That's what drove me to coaching in the first place.
Yeah.
It's not about being in big groups. It's about really connecting one-on-one. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Kanchan, as the social the social 2 is about helping, but in service of the broader community, right? Like not having a problem stepping into leadership, but really about the group. It's a caring leadership, as I like to call it. So it's an acts of service for a broader group or broader community. How does that land with you?
It lands both personally and professionally. Let me just share a little story around personally. As soon as COVID hit, my immediate reaction was for my family and my extended family, my brothers, my nieces, my nephews, my parents. We have 17 of us who since beginning of March are on weekly Zoom calls. And I did not expect that because my nieces and nephews are all in their 20s and they've got partners and wives and stuff. And everyone, it's amazing how that has continued to be. Like that started because I immediately went to, oh my gosh, how are we all doing as a unit? And what can we do about that? So I see it definitely resonate with that for sure. And also on my professional side as well, and working with women of color.
Yeah, so that's so fascinating, like how we're all twos, but it's a different flavor of twos. And as a social two, sometimes social twos can be very like eight-like, to be, take charge, in control, and assertive for the group, though, like not for standing up for your own needs, like for the group. And so it's almost like a social justice thing that social twos and eights, it's like really fighting for a cause or fighting for the group. And the interesting thing, Kanchan, for social twos and for eights, the vulnerability piece, which could be actually like sharing really with your community that you're helping and serving what makes you vulnerable and your own needs and asking for help. Even with asking for help within the group you're even helping would be a great step for you in development. That humility piece, that you can be the leader of the group and still ask for help. You can serve and lead a whole community, but still tell them your needs. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I just took a deep breath in. My first reaction was to go, that's a really interesting perspective. I mean, I hadn't even thought of,
Yeah. That's kind of cool though, right? To genuinely ask for help the people that you're helping. How about you, Claire? What's coming up for you in terms of a way forward, from our conversation today?
Well, I think there's something really there in asking for help, because I'm doing it more, but I think actually, interestingly, with my family, I'm not. Yeah. It's interesting how much families come up in this conversation, actually. But I'm not great at asking I'll chat with them, but do I ever ask them for help? Yeah. And I'm a bit annoyed with my dad right now, actually, because he hasn't said he wants to get in touch, and I'm like, well, why isn't he? And I'm like, oh, it's me that needs to, It's like, instead of going, Dad, I could really do half an hour of your time. No, I'm just like, he hasn't called me. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, it's so interesting though, right? But having not directly expressed it, but then being annoyed that you're not getting what you need, but you also haven't asked for it, right?
Yeah, classic.
So I'm wondering if, what's coming up for me, Claire, is because you also want to work on the 4 with being creative, but you also have trouble asking for help because it feels very selfish, right? So what if we kind of explored doing something very creative, but where it also feels very selfish and you're asking for help? Something like with all those elements, like asking for help in something creative where it feels a little bit edgy and selfish. So that might be somewhere for you to explore. So, yeah, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, post-COVID. But yes, Yeah, definitely.
And how about you, Tony? What's coming up for you as like something a step forward as the results of our talk today?
Well, I get my brain thinking here. I got a lot of things in my mind. One of the first thing that comes to mind is these boundaries I need to create. That it's actually very, very paradoxical right now. There is an element of creating more boundaries, but there's also an element of reaching out more. I need to rely on allies and create some more opportunities to get help when I need it, but also create boundaries so that I'm not overstretching and taking care of myself. Because has been in this time when a lot of people are saying, oh, I have this time on my hands. And I'm like thinking to myself, I haven't been taking time to really take care of myself and really step back. I've been just filling the calendar with lots of stuff, good and bad. So.
Yeah. Well, what's coming up for me is with your one-to-one subtype, where usually it's you sacrificing and helping someone else. What would it be like if there's specific people you can think of where you in turn ask them directly for help?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's on my mind is going back to them and, seeing how I can ask for help from those people directly, but knowing exactly what the ask is, which is the challenge right now. That's what I can't articulate, and I will.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great point. Are getting clear on what you need and what you want. That's the first step for all twos, right? We get really clear what you need and what you want, and then secondly, directly asking for it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this was so fun. You are all lovely, and I love talking about the Enneagram, and I love learning more about you, and just learning about the head and heart and mind of it too. So let's wrap things up. So what would be just a one sentence checkout that you would like to give, or a one sentence that you would like to put out into the world as a result of what's coming up for you today?
This is going to be so too but I have to say it. Hayden, you are awesome at what you do. You are phenomenal at what you do, especially with the Enneagram. So I put that message out there.
Well, thank you. I received that. I have problems receiving. So thank you.
Yeah. I'll go next, I guess. I'll just say that the Enneagram is really a powerful tool, system for us to really leverage. And I'm looking forward to putting it to work for my benefit because that's what it's there for.
Cool. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, and for me, what I'm feeling right now is I feel really open and seen. Like my heart feels really seen. So like my core, which is lovely, and actually feels very grounding, which I loved. Which is so it's a beautiful space you've created here. So thank you, and I think there's some real practical things to look at as well. So to keep that feeling going for longer.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Claire, and thank you, Tony, and thank you, Kanchan. This was so fun, and like I said, I love twos. Like twos are so great. We need twos in the world, and from a non-two to my two friends, I just want you to know I love you all simply for being you. Even if you never help me ever again or do one more thing, I love you just who you are, because we are all deserving and worthy of love just by our mere existence, whether or not we do anything ever again. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, viewers. If you're watching, please go ahead and if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as we'll be doing more Enneagram interviews. And also check out my website, haydenlee.com, HAYDENLEE.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter, where I'll also be talking more about the Enneagram. So thank you once again, my lovely twos. Thank you, viewers, and everyone. Have a lovely day. We'll see you next time.